Hello and welcome back in another video about Black Lion. This is the third part, so if you didn't check the second part, definitely firstly go for that. Link is going to be here or in the description. Why is that important? Because you cannot follow this part if you didn't watch the second part. Second part is 1 hour, full theory, so I'm suggesting you if you want to play this opening for sure. And yeah, so today we're gonna check these model games from the very strong grandmasters to see new ideas and to finalize this opening so you can have a very strong knowledge in this opening. You can beat wherever you want and whoever you want. So to start with the first game, one and only Simon Williams, the guy who actually explored this opening at maximum. So he brings a lot of ideas here. He brings a lot of opportunities for black to attack on the king side with our famous h6 and g5. So let's start with the first game. Usually how you're making the black line. So if you don't know, as I mentioned, check firstly the second part. But if you want to learn from this video, I'm gonna tell something quick. So this is the general placement of the pieces, how you want to set up your black line attack. So now, as we know, bishop c4 is the main move here, but white can also play something normal like bishop to e2. He doesn't have to go for bishop c4, but bishop c4 is definitely one of the most aggressive response. So after bishop c4, in this game, Simon played bishop e7. If you don't know, c6 is not possible here because knight g5 is coming and you don't have option for castling. That's why you firstly want to bring your bishop here, and then if they do knight g5, you want to castle. After bishop e7, white goes castles, and now c6. So you don't have to go castles immediately. You can postpone that and wait for the right moment, like if you don't want to push the pawn. Sometimes it's very risky to push these pawns. So generally, we are now setting up our position and we're gonna see what white is going to play. In that way, we're gonna develop our position. Knight g5 now is just inaccuracy because it just wastes the time, and they cannot actually take on f7 because you're gonna just retake with your rook, and like very simply you're gonna get two minor pieces for the rook, which is completely enough for small advantage in the middle game. Of course, this position is not clear because now white can start with some f4 to open up the f line, but very slowly you can bring your king back. You can even take some pawn in the center, try to break up the position. You just need to develop your either pieces, and after you develop your own minor pieces, black will be completely safe. So this is not the idea. a4, of course, to stop b5. b5 is usually one of the very good plans for black, so if he doesn't want to go for h6 and g5, b5 can be your idea. And also, like, if you manage to push even b4 later, you can capture this pawn on e4 because then the knight is going to be kicked after all these pushings. Queen c7 and rook e1. Okay, very useful move for white to protect this pawn. And now black starts with his normal h6. So we are planning to go with his g5. Let's comment here if white goes h3. This wasn't in the game, but we already know that this pawn movement, h2, h3, is a hook for black. So black wants to play g5 now and then to play g4 to completely open this g line and then to go after the white's king on the king side. But of course, this is the grandmaster level and white didn't play the move h3. He decided for something which is really concrete, and that's b3. He wants to place the bishop this diagonal or on this diagonal. That gives him a lot of pressure in our center, and this is actually one of the best white's plans. How to fight against that? We cannot push now g5 because g5 now would be a mistake. For one reason, because after bishop e2, if you start rerouting your knight on this side, very simply, white can just take in the center the pawn, and like if you take back with your pawn, otherwise you're losing the pawn. Now there is very nice idea of knight takes e5 sacrifice, all because you push your pawn to the g5, because now this diagonal is a target. And if you capture this knight, now knight to d5 comes, this carry attack, attacking the queen, targeting the knight behind, But maybe you're thinking, why then they left the bishop hanging there? It's because knight to c7 is a checkmate. Yeah, we don't want to play this. So otherwise, if you put your queen somewhere like on e6, any other square, they still have this knight c7. If you play queen to d6 to protect this square, they can even push d6, e5, and then to just regain the material. The center is open, and this is completely losing for black. Like, black is lost here. Like, we cannot do anything. So that's what we don't want to do. So how to fight against this b3? Let's go castle, like Simon did in the game. So there is no risky lion anymore. We don't want to prove it because our opponent is playing very perfectly and very accurate. Bishop b2 and rook e8. So very simple idea. Now we want to put our knight on f8 and g6, like in the normal idea of targeting the king side. But now we are going to do that with the pieces, which is much more powerful, instead of pushing the pawns. So now white brings the bishop back. I can say this is a little inaccuracy because the bishop already stayed well on this diagonal and now he's just looking at his own pawn. But only benefit from this move is if he wants to reroute the knight to protect this pawn, or our knight is gonna capture it. So that's why he put maybe the bishop here. But I think this is really passive. The bishop already stayed very well on this diagonal. And we cannot break it with b5 because there is a4. So he should find something more convenient. For example, something like a5. Why not to interrupt more the pawn structure on the queen side, then maybe to push another pawn, like simply counterplay against the black knight. So yeah, bishop d3, and now knight f8, knight to e2, knight to g6, knight to g3. So they rerouted all pieces, and now bishop to f8. So now simply we are retreating our bishop, opening the line for our rook, and in the future we are starting to make some pressure in the center. Also, some of our ideas can be to put the bishop on g4 in very near future, to pin this knight, and maybe some rerouting the knight from h7 to g5, or if this knight is going to be moved, we can get the outpost on f4. I mean, we are already getting the outpost on f4, like we are going to see it in the next move. So h3 from white, and now knight to f4 by Simon. So placing the knight on very useful square. Already no position, already no plan for black, but our king is in the castle now. He's not in the center, and we didn't push g5. But let's see how he break the king side. Bishop f1, and now very nice move, knight h7. So if you cannot do that with the pawns, do it with the pieces, because now when you jump on g5, you're gonna provide, if they capture, the pawn from h to stay on g5. You're not gonna weaken the king side by moving the g5 pawn. Very nice thing. So now white should definitely capture an e5 and trying to open up the d line to put a pressure more on this pawn. I don't know, maybe some moves like queen to d2 and queen to c3 to look at that pawn, then to bring another rook into the game and to try to do this to do the things in this way. But he decided to push c4. And that's actually making a horse. For example, b4 in the future, like if he takes, then our bishop is very well controlling the b4 square, so no easy pushing on the queen side, no easy counterplay. And now knight g5, so we're bringing the pieces into the game. They decided to take. They definitely should not take here. They should wait us to take on f3 and then to activate a queen. Instead of that, white should maybe play something like c5 immediately to be concrete. That would break the center for sure, but also looks weird to break the center while he still didn't develop other pieces, like didn't put the rooks into the game, didn't put the queen away from the d line. So this move is always useful in those kind of pawn structures. So for the white players who are watching this and struggling with the black lion, you should make immediately counterplay, because if you wait for the black will do this. He will challenge your knight. If you take, you're gonna make his pawn very nice. Then he will push g4. Then these pieces are looking very nicely on the king side. The queen's gonna come into the game. Maybe he will take, open up on the inline, and many things happens on the king side. But he decided to take. He didn't push the c5, which just take back. and now d5. So this move is very, very passive. Closing the queen side. And black should play c5, for example, and just close it. But Simon didn't want to waste the time, and he worked more on the king side. He was not scared about taking here because usually known, like in the game was g6, and like if he decide to take now, then this position is very nice for black again, because the open b line, we are still having control over the d5 square, so it's important to always have this pawn on c6. Is it going to be original pawn on c6 or b7 when it comes to c6? You have to do that, because otherwise you're gonna have many weaknesses, and maybe if he has the knight on c3 he can jump and then ruin all your plans if you see many big weaknesses then on the light squares. But now we are just opening here, the bishop comes here, maybe ideas with d5, also some g4, queen e7, queen h4 ideas, so many other things for black. So this is not what white wants. He decided with a5. And this g6 move is really nice because also stopping the knight of jumping into the king side with these moves. And now c5. Now he decided to block because he's seeing that black is intending to play b4. But of course now he can try b4 again like in the game. But now this doesn't work. Why? Because we can just simply take the pawn. And if he decides to push more pawns, we can just take it with a queen or with a pawn. Like both things works. We're just grabbing these pawns. White think that he has some initiative on the queen side, because black is deciding to make a very huge attack on the king side. But this thing doesn't go well. So let's see how black took the initiative for himself. Queen a4, and now simply putting the pieces on the king side, protecting the rook, protecting the pawn, trying to play g4, then queen h4, and then going for checkmate. Also makes option for bishop d7, and we didn't close the queen on c7, so we didn't lock the queen. We could play here the move bishop d7, that's also possible. But then we are closing the queen on the queen side, so we need more moves to retreat the queen and provide a support on the king side. That's why we immediately play this move, also protects the rook, and in the next move we're gonna play bishop d7, for example, if they didn't take here. But now white decided to take, and g4, starting with our attack. H takes g4 was in the game, and now queen h4. So a lot of ideas here for black. Even something like bishop e7, king to g7, and rook h8. So you have many time here to process your idea, because the center is closed, there is no counterplay on the king side, this is very well protected, and you actually don't need this rook in the game. Bishop is already supporting, staying on this diagonal, so is he staying on d7 or c8? He's already doing a great job. After queen h4, rook a3, very nice move, supporting the king side, so lifting the rook, that's a very famous motive. And now we can bring another idea in the game, f6, rook e7, rook h7. So many ideas how to bring the rook on the h line, because we just want to give a checkmate. But he firstly decided to take. And this pawn on b7 is indirectly protected, because if they take, we can just play rook b8 and then win this bishop on b2. Very simply. So rook b8, and now if they take here, we just take the bishop, we are up a piece. And black is winning. So, poison pawn. Knight e2, nice move, offering the trade. And black doesn't want to take, because that would develop the bishop and simplify the king side. We're not gonna have resource for the attack. But okay, we cannot really move the knight back anywhere. Knight h5 doesn't make so much sense. So we say, okay, take on f4, we don't care about that, we're gonna put our rook active, and if you take our knight here, we're gonna open up the inline, we're gonna strike here, now we are striking here, we are maybe trying to play f3, then this bishop is gonna come into the game, support here, and give a checkmate. And also, again, we have the similar idea of doing this and this, to go for checkmate. But he decided to play g3, and this is slightly worse than the taking actually on f4, because that weakness the light squares. So after knight h3, logically, giving a check, we are offering a trade. So if they take now, then they will not have the light square bishop. So we're just one move away of giving a checkmate. Of course, this rook is protecting it, but maybe we're gonna place firstly f5, provoke this pawn. Like let's say now, white plays something stupid, like let's say bishop c1. Then now we play f5. They do this. And now we can play this, and now intending to play something like bishop to f3. For example, this some idea. Or we can just play something like f6, then play this, and then play this, going for checkmate. So all things are possible here, because black is the one who is providing the very strong attack on the king side, and white can just defend against that, because there is no pushing anymore in this position. So of course he cannot take, because bishop is a great defender. King to g2, and now queen h5. So moves the queen, threatens knight g5, threatens bishop f3, and threatens the checkmate together with his bishop. So again, many tactics here, many tactical opportunities for black. And of course, black has to be careful, because white is always offering a trade of the pieces. If we trade many pieces, then we're not gonna have the attack, and he will just collect all of our pawns and then just promote the queen, because he will have the passed pawn. We have to be careful about it. Here, Simon decided to take king g1 and f5. So if you forgot the idea, now we can even do that with the other rook. We don't have to do it with this one, because that would block the way from our bishop, protecting the d6 pawn. So now this rook come into the game, and going g7, f7, or mainly h7 to support the kingside attack. E takes f5, g takes f5. Still, this is a poison pawn. They cannot take, because we have the same idea of rook to b8 and then collecting the bishop on b2. Bishop g2, rook c7, and now he could play something like f3 to kick our bishop away, but then we do this. And we offer a trade, and now our idea is not to place rook on h7. Now we're gonna put it to target the weakness, because with this move, they're weakening the pawn on g3. Very simple. So now this is our target. Usually when you are providing the attack, when you're launching attack, is it any opening? Like, is it Sicilian? Is it King's Indian or something like that? You're usually tries to provoke your opponent's pawn to be pushed. Then, around them, you're gonna face many weak squares. So just imagine we have the bishop on this diagonal. That would be probably over immediately, but in black line, you know that we are always struggling with this bishop. And this bishop is always saving for later things. In the endgame, or like if we open it this way, or I don't know, maybe this way. Okay, in the game was f4. Instead of f3, they push f4. And now, very simply, Simon could like just close this bishop and having the very strong passed pawn and just go for the checkmate with this way. But he decided to take and to open up the f line, e line. And now he wants to stack the rooks. He wants to trade. Like if they don't take, we can play f3. If they don't take, we can even take, then go for the checkmate. Like, of course, for them, could be useful to take here and then go for this. But then they made a blunder, which is now in the next couple of moves over for white. A very simple reason is because we can just take, and after they take, we can just push the pawn. This bishop is now bad placed on f1, bad placed on h1, and the rook is coming on h7 to go for queen h2. In this position, white resigns. Very simple. The pawn is protected twice, so they cannot take. Even if they take, try to sacrifice the material, there is no counterplay, because checkmate is not possible. We are protecting everything, if you see. And they don't have light square bishop to harass our king on this diagonal, so no pushing with the checks. What could happen? For example, bishop f1, and now just rook h7, intending to give a checkmate. And now there is no defense. Like if they try to bring the queen to stop it on h2, then we can just do this. And after this, the rook comes into the game, and we're just gonna get a queen. And very soon the white's king is gonna be checkmated. So the critical moment of the position was when black started with this pawn, and when they actually accept the trade. with having actually the king on the king side, you see how many moves black spend of retreating the pieces and moving them on the king side, like the queen from c7 to h4, the rook from c8 to c7 to h7. Also, this knight was knight h7, knight g5. This knight came from this, and this. So basically the normal black lion plan, but with a castling, which is of course more precise and more accurate for black because you are not risking and opening the king side. Okay, that was the first game. Let's take a look another game now. So let's see. This game was played between the Gusov and Grishuk. Grishuk, very famous Russian player, grandmaster. Bishop c4, bishop e7, castles. So you see we're having a castling on the grandmaster level, of course. They're not intending to push the pawns. This is not they would want because it's risky too much on that level. Rook e1, and now Grishuk start with a6. So practically he's saying, okay, I want to push b5 and I want to place my bishop on b7 to target this pawn. And then Gusenov says, okay, a4, I will not allow you that, and now b6. So this is now a different plan because you see that black is not focusing of pushing the pawns on the king side and retreating the pieces immediately. He's more focusing to develop his light square bishop, put him on the nice diagonal, make a pressure in the center, and then later he's gonna do this plan because he wants to connect the rooks immediately. Knight e5 and bishop e7. So always when they put the knight like this, don't take because you don't want to change the pawn structure. If you take here on d5, they will retake with this pawn and they're gonna open up this line. They're gonna put a pressure on your pawn on e5 and you're gonna be in trouble. So never takes. And now white did something that actually helps black a lot. Knight takes e7. Instead of taking this bishop, he could take the knight on f6. The reason why this is not the best idea for white is because we are now saying thank you. We are now not having a bad bishop on e7 who is actually blocking our position. We are not having a good flexibility with our pieces. And now our queen came here, then the rook is gonna just come really fast in the center. And black is actually doing fine. He's even having a faster development than white. So not a great plan from white, but could happen, of course. Now bishop d3. So we've seen this move actually in the previous game. And bishop is now again looking in this pawn. Why? Because we are actually threatening to take on e4. So he has to be a passive bishop now. And now rook from f to e8. If you now ask me which side I prefer definitely more black, because one of the next moves will be knight f8, knight g6 with some idea of h6 to stop this bishop g5. Also intending to maneuver some of these knights on f4 to bring this rook on d8, and maybe we can push c5 very soon because we want actually now to open up the center. We are faster than our opponent. He did c3. Okay, of course we are not taking. We don't want to let them having this strong center pawns, if you see, controlling everything. We don't want to do that. That would be a really big mistake. We are keeping that pressure. We are retreating our knight f8, knight g6, and then we want to control the king side again. Knight h4 by white. So he's saying, okay, I want to put my knight on f5. So if you put your knight on g6, I'm gonna attack your queen, and then I'm gonna be first on that square. Usually when opponents or you're doing knight h5 move or they're doing knight h4, usually there is some tactics like this. And now opening the way of the queen attacking and taking the pawn. But here that doesn't work because they can just simply take on e4 with a bishop, and now they're gonna provide the attack on your piece. So if you take the knight, they're gonna take your bishop, and suddenly black is losing because we are down the piece. So if we take here and then they take on a rook, and now the rook is actually defending the knight. But maybe we can do f5, d5. Actually not, because after f5 knight will take just a pawn, free pawn. Now the white is up a piece. If we do d5 here, then rook g4 just, and defending. Defending still the knight. Now they even having some tricks with rook takes g7, and if the king takes back, knight f5 provides the fork. So this is the thing that we don't know how to do, because this tactic is definitely bad for us. But we can protect the f5 square with a move such as g6. So our knight's gonna come on e6, and then we're gonna put the knight on f4 from this spot. Then they decide to play knight f3. So usually, as I mentioned, like you are doing, that's also the way how white wants to do. He wants to provoke your pawns to be pushed. So now all these dark squares are weak by our side. But okay, we didn't make so much terrible decision. We just didn't want to let the knight jump on f5, which is going to be very bad for our queen. We have to move the queen again, and they can do faster development than us. And now knight h5, so at least why this pawn is very well positioned here is protecting our knight. So now there is no any tactics with this discovery, taking the pawn and collecting our knight on h5. After knight h5, bishop g5 attacks our queen, and now f6. Defending, blocking the attack, of course, why not? Like, our bishop is light square bishop, and pawns are staying on the dark squares. So bishop is providing a great job on the light squares, and pawns are covering the dark squares. So that's really great combo in chess. Bishop to d2, knight to e6, and you see, suddenly, who is going to control better the game? Of course, black. Bishop f1, but we have to keep in mind that the white is having a bishop pair. So if we let our opponent open the center, open the diagonals, open the lines, those two bishops can be definitely more stronger than our knights. We just have to keep that in mind, to not open up still. King h8, very great prophylaxis. So what is our idea now? We want to place the rook on g8, then we want to place the knight on g5, then maybe to push the pawns, even to sacrifice something, because we want to open up the g line, even for some sort of initiative, sacrificing the piece and going just for checkmate. Let's see how the Grishuk did it in the game. g3 by white, very nice move, stopping knight f4, and he wants to put a bishop on g2 to provide more defense, and yeah, just simply to prevent knight f4. But we are doing this rook in the center. Bishop g2, we are activating of course all of our pieces. For now we cannot really push immediately, because we don't want to face some h4 move. So that's why he's bringing the knight back. He wants to support also maybe f5 in the future, or when he pushes the g5, he wants to keep in mind on these light squares. The reason why we cannot also push here the move g5 is because they have this, and now our knight is under the attack. So that's also another reason why we cannot push. This discovery is a very natural in this sort of position, so be careful. That's why knight from h to g7. So now we want to push g5, queen to c2, and now g5. So very simply, like when you're in the close position, you have all time on this world. But when you're in the open position, you don't have so much time to do this kind of maneuvering with your knights. Rook from a to d1, queen to f7, queen goes to h5. Suddenly, we are starting our pressure on the king side. d5. And of course, we are not putting knight on c5. We don't do our knight on the to stay there, because where are the pieces? On the king side. Where is the attack? On the king side. Let's put the knight back. Now we want to retreat the knight on f8, to put the knight on g6 here, the control again f4, to bring the bishop back here, and just to put all pieces on the king side with very massive attack. c4, knight g6, bishop c3, knight to h5. So suddenly the knights are coming back again on their own spots. So we're just waiting for the moment of knight f4. b4, white has to do something, otherwise we are playing just on one side for mate, and they could not just defend all the time. They need to provide a counterplay, and that's what they're doing now. They want to push all these pawns. Rook g8, we don't care about c5. We don't care about c5. We are putting the bishop, activating. Like if they want to capture, of course we're gonna recapture. We don't want to let them pass pawn and troubles. So okay, at least they open something. But let's see what they're gonna do. Like how they're gonna break this? How they gonna collect these pawns? We are actually protecting something here with the bishop, and then the rook is protecting this. Okay, this pawn is not protected, but it's generally not a target of white for now. 92, and now here comes the thing. So he start retreating the pieces. Instead of pushing the pieces, he's moving them back because white got scared. I can tell you honestly here, you will not guess the valuation from the engine, but it's around +1 for white. But the problem is that white doesn't have a plan. And here his plan is really slow. So black just have to be really precise to not sacrifice in the moment which white wants to sacrifice, to accept the sacrifice. He wants firstly to set up everything precise. So like if he wants to step up with the rooks here to double it, okay, firstly do that, then do the sacrifice. You cannot sacrifice without preparing your position. 92, intending to play this and then to make problems in our pawns. And now b5. So that actually stops the knight of being active and provides the very good blockade on the queen side. A takes b5, a takes b5 of course, and now knight f1. So he wants to put a knight maybe here to control this square. But now suddenly the knight is in a bad square because he's all the way back, so we can use the power of our knights and just step into the moment and then sacrifice the knight. If we grab this bishop on g1, on g2, then we're gonna have full control over the light squares on this side of the board. So let's see what I'm gonna do if this thing happens, like if the capture happens. If the capture happens, now g takes f4, and now the g line is open. We are trying to play bishop h3 move with a very famous tactic. So if they play something like, I don't know, like for example queen here, then just bishop h3 and the black is completely winning. We're gonna take the bishop. If they try to move the king like this, okay, let's do sacrifice again. King takes back, and now another rook comes with a check. King moves here, and some moves like a bishop g4 with idea of bishop f3 would be checkmate, right? So they have to prevent it, like maybe something with a rook here to prevent this idea. But now queen comes into the game, and we are now not trying to protect this square with the pawns to push. Now we have another threat. Bishop f3 sacrifice, and then queen to g2. So if white plays something stupid like this, then we're doing bishop f3, check. If they take, queen to g2, checkmate. So that's why exchanging this bishop when the pawns are not connected on the second rank, if the pawn is staying on g3, the light squares are very weak, and exchanging this bishop like we did, even with the sacrifice, is really great idea, because look how much is powerful this bishop on g4. So they didn't take because of this. So they decided to put the knight into the game, but anyway, we're gonna capture the bishop, so we're gonna say again thank you. This bishop is really strong. They take back, and now again knight f4. So suddenly we are sacrificing another knight, and we want to open up just the g line for our rooks and the bishop, which is really strong. So this bishop is definitely not one piece who is going to protect. So we eliminate many pieces like the light square bishop and another knight who is defender actually, because this bishop cannot be defender of the light squares. So now if they capture again, we're gonna again open the line, we're gonna again sacrifice the rook, we're gonna again put the rook on g8 and bishop h3, queen comes into the game and it's checkmate again. So they cannot do that, and also f3 is a threat for now. So they decided to play f3, then now queen to h5 comes. Again, I'm just ignoring the knight, so if they want to take, just take it, like we don't want that. We don't want the knight. They push the g4, and this actually helps black a lot, because now we have another hook after queen h3, again targeting the knight, and after h5 we are completely interested of blowing up the king side with h5 and then finally opening the g line for our rook. Queen to f2 was in the game, and now h5. So white cannot do anything better than exchanging the queens, because if you let us open the G line again, as I mentioned, it will be a checkmate very soon. So he decided to play queen g3, then black just take the pawn, they take back, and now bishop takes g4. So we are up a pawn in the game, but very clear pawn up, with idea also to play f5 in the future. White played the move rook to d2, so he was not interested in exchanging the queens. And you know what we are saying to that? Okay, I want to keep the queens on the board. We are moving the queen back, and now, I mean, black is completely winning. We don't need to discuss anymore this game, but let's see how black did it. Finally, how he released his attack. Knight to e3, bishop to d7, king to h1, and now rook g7, with the idea of rook h7 and rook g8. So improving the pieces all the time in the game. All the time, just look for improving the pieces. Rook to g1, rook to h7, bishop to b2. So you see, white is just out of the moves. Like, he cannot do anything. Queen to g6, targeting the e4 pawn, so not a very good idea. So let's target the weaknesses. In chess, you're always focusing on the weaknesses, and when your opponent is making mistakes, how to punish them. Of course, black could try here with doing knight to e2, but he doesn't need that. This knight is so powerful than the rook here on d2. Controls many squares and poses many problems. Queen g6, queen to f3, rook to g8 in the game. We are just trying to blow up completely and open every single line on this side. Rook to c2, rook to h3 comes. And now g4 happens, queen g3, knight h5, hitting the knight, hitting the queen h4, and now we cannot take actually here, because we're gonna get a checkmate with this, and this. We have to be careful in some positions. But how black did, he offered a queen trade, then they accepted, and this is the moment where black made a bit of complications, because now rook takes d6, and of course after g3 black is the one who is still playing for the win, but black could do something better here. Instead of putting the knight on h5, he could firstly place the queen on g5, and then just said, my idea is to play now knight h5 again, or knight to e2, trap your queen, and then take this knight for free. So if, let's say, they protect the knight now with bishop c1, now knight h5, and there is no counterplay with queen h4. If the queen e1 happens, then now g3, and now we are opening everything. So now this is the moment where white cannot stop us of going for checkmate. They have to sacrifice something. Like if they try to put the rook down there, then we just take. If the rook takes here, then we just do knight h3, check. If king to g1, then we just take here, check again. If the king moves back, then we just, I don't know, like we can even come back with our knight on g3. We can also do queen h5 to threaten the queen f3, and then, I mean, black is winning here. So you see how much is powerful when you organize your pieces. It's not about opening. The black line is a very solid opening, of course, especially on the level 1500, 1000, even 2000. This is also very fine. I'm still playing this opening on 2500, so chess.com rating, of course. So I'm having very good results, and I'm really suggesting you, because from this opening you can very nicely understand that it's not always about the attack. It's also about maneuvering your pieces, supporting your attack with the pieces who are not active. You see how much we retreat the pieces, put the pieces into game, and then finally decided to break, and when we got a chance, of course, on the king side. And now we're gonna see another game, the game between Jubava and Muhammad Nasser. So Jubava was black, and we're gonna skip this first part because we already know that. We learned the theory, we watched the second part of the black line, right? So check it again. A5 here from Jubava. So he actually wants to stop any sort of progressing on the queen side from white. So he's saying, okay, maybe in this game we're not gonna push the pawns on the king side, but we're gonna stabilize our position. We want to control some squares in the future. Maybe queen b6, knight b6 happens maybe. So now there is no any more pushing. There is no any more breaks for now. That's really good. And even if there is a break, they're gonna open up our rook on a line. Rook e1, h6. So we want just to stop any sort of knight g5, bishop g5. Why not? And if they decided to play knight h4 here, to put a knight here in the center, now we have knight e4. Now it's a different position, so this discovery now works because we are targeting the knight and we are targeting this knight. So if they decide to take here, we can just easily take here on h4. But wait, we are losing the pawn on d6. No, bishop takes f2. King takes f2, and now queen f6, regaining the piece. So these small tactics you always have to check in your calculation of priorities. I mean, about a calculation of priority, I can make another video for that. That's really useful to practice strategical stuff for sure. But now we're gonna focus just on attacking and tactics in this opening. b3 again from the white. We've seen this move, right? In the first game. They want to put a bishop on this diagonal. And now queen c7, bishop b2, rook e8. So again, we want to retreat a piece, to put a knight on this side, and then control the king side in this way. We have queen d2, knight f8, rook from a to d1, knight g6. Again, very simple plan. Putting the pieces on f4, going this and this. That's what we're gonna see. I'm just predicting what's gonna happen. Queen e3, knight h7, knight e2, knight g5. Okay, very famous plan, right? If they capture, we're gonna capture with a pawn. Maybe not even with a bishop, because that's also possible. Knight g3, knight f4. Here we are. We jump, we control, we attack. So that's how the black line opening works. Maybe even ideas with something like queen d7 and then sacking and then bringing the queen into the attack. Who knows what's gonna happen later? Of course, now it's not possible because we're gonna stay on the D line, but there's ideas, plans. You should always consider something new. Try to be creative. Knight g5, so we've seen that. And now h takes g5, it's fine, but Jubava decided to take here with a bishop and pose immediately threat with discovery attack on the queen, taking on h3 and giving a check here. So that's why they have to move the queen on f3 and now g6. So we stop any sort of progressing with the knight. Okay, maybe we win the weakness, but we have still the dark square bishop, so it's not dangerous. It's not dangerous because we are still protecting everything. Knight e2, knight takes e2, queen takes e2, and king g7. Okay, from this game, we're gonna see something more slowly, something more positional. But here's the thing, if your opponent decides to play very patient and to be really careful, he doesn't want to provide pushing with a pawn so much, like we've seen in the previous games, then you're gonna face something like this, which is actually a solid position for black, because any endgame works solid, equal, like you don't have problems. Maybe something on this diagonal, but you're gonna retreat your bishop. Queen d3, bishop f6, everything is stable. Rook f1, rook to d8. So now, if they decide to take, we're gonna open up the D line. And now suddenly white starts striking with f4, which looks scary, but it's something that you don't have to worry about now because you have small tactic here. Takes on f4, rook takes f4, and now d5. Double attack, right? Here and here. White decided to sack the material because he has the bishop here and he tries to activate it. Maybe this bishop this way, and this bishop can be already active from this diagonal when he takes. So king takes, e takes d5, c takes d5, queen f3, and now if you go king to g7, there's bishop takes d5. And when he moves the bishop, he will open up and your king will be in danger. So that's why he decided to play bishop f5 immediately, because now takes here doesn't work. We have this. Poses the problem, still attacks the bishop, attacks the rook. So our next tactic is take the d5 bishop, they take back, and we take the rook. So big problems for white. He's holding the initiative, of course, with the bishops, but it's not clear. Bishop f5, really nice move. In case of g4, we can just take this bishop, or we can firstly maybe put a king back, Let's say they take, we take here, and in case of something like this, we just move the king back. And they cannot do anything. Everything is protected, protecting here. The king is open, more than our king. This rook will enter the game this way, and black is better. I will not say winning because it's still tricky, but black is definitely better. So sacrificing the material sometimes doesn't mean that you're winning the game, and it looks sharp, of course, but you have to be careful. I mean, I'm telling now with the white pieces that he has to be careful, otherwise he will lose the game if black protects everything. Bishop d3, king g7, bishop takes, g takes, and now the problem is that this bishop is closed. So if this bishop is open, black is checkmated. But black did everything in his hands to stop this bishop of being active. And now, what would be the best maneuver in this position? Queen takes f5, and now rook a6. So if you cannot develop your bishop from the line, develop it from the rank. Do you see how much now this a5 move is powerful? Bring the rook into the game, placing on g6, provides the counterplay, and plus defends the king from any checks. In the game was rook c1, bishop c1, rook f6 firstly attacks the queen, queen g4, rook g6, queen f3, queen takes c2, and slowly white collapsed here because black is just better, he has better material, and now he's the one who is putting the pressure, targeting the pieces, threatening to put another rook into the game. How the game continues, rook f1, rook d7, we have to protect this pawn on f7, of course, bishop to f4, offering the queen trade, why not, because we are better, always when you're better look for trades, queen f2, king h7, king h2, f6, g3, rook e7, offer the queen trade, and win the game. I mean, he couldn't lose the queen like this. He should definitely take here on g2, but then this is still winning for black. Simply, he will go collect the other pawns on the king side. The rook can be activated back like this. The king is in the white's king in a very big problem, and yeah, black is just simply winning this. So if you wanted to be in this study, because this is study on lichess, there is plenty of more games. You're gonna see many more ideas in the black line. Drop the comment, put me in the study, and write me your lichess username. So I will let you be in this study about black line, and you can see many useful games, analyze games, of course, with a very nice comments. You can have it so for free. Okay, yeah, with this third game we're gonna finish the modern game segment of doing the black lion third part. So I hope this helps you a lot now to understand a bit deeper this opening and what ideas you can implement immediately in your next game, how to attack without pushing the pawns. So you know, black line sometimes is very risky and you don't have to push the pawns all the time. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'm seeing you next time.